stop, don't skip. I have a quick little announcement. If you've already watched the last Marvel Champions video, you probably know what I'm going to say, but I am running a survey right now that's in the description as well as in the comments section that is basically the best of Marvel Champions 2021, the community vote. So in the next couple weeks, probably mid-December, I'm going to be putting out a video that is the best of Marvel Champions 2021. We're going to be talking about the best hero that was released this year, the best ally that was released this year, what was your favorite aspect this year, whole bunch of stuff. This is something I'm going to be trying to do annually at the end of every year, but I also want to hear from you guys and know what the community votes for all the same categories. So in the video, I will give my thoughts for each of the categories, and then I'll reveal what the polls revealed, and we'll see what the community voted for each of the categories. So if you want to have your voice heard, the survey is going to be open until December 3rd. You can find it in the description. Take some time, fill it out, and you'll see all the results in mid-December. With that being said, let's jump into Valkyrie. How is it going, everyone? I am Dylan from All You Can Board, and I am back somehow yet again for another Marvel Champions review. All these releases squished right together. We got like the full expansion, Mad Titan Shadow, we got the Hood, we got Valkyrie, Nebula was right in there, like everything was just all crunched together. War Machine, everything was right in there, and I am back with this one. I think this might just be the final pack we're gonna review for the entire year of 2021, because I think Vision's not coming out until the start of 2022, but at this point, who knows? The way these releases have been going, I'm basically expecting the unexpected. I'm expecting to get an email from my local game store saying Vision's here, and I'm gonna have to jump on that in December. But if not, this may just be the last review we cover. So this is a big monumental moment. I mean, I only started doing Marvel Champions in January of this year, so this is basically a full year of content. That being said, Valkyrie is a pretty interesting hero. She is very minion focused in the same way that Thor was minion focused, and because of that, a lot of the cards that she's introducing into the game that are not part of her hero cards, like that are the basic cards or the aggression cards, are actually going to help Thor as much as they're going to help Valkyrie. So pretty interesting pack. We're going to jump right into it, and we're going to, of course, start where we always start with these packs, and that is with the alter ego side of the hero card, and that is Brunhild. So this says recovery of 4, and the setup is set the Death Glow upgrade aside out of play. We'll get to that in a second. It also says not this day, action, detach Death Glow and set it aside out of play. So she has a hand size of 6, she has hit points of 12, which is pretty good for hit points. Recovery is obviously 1 more than normal. The Death Glow upgrade is something I'm gonna highlight right now before we even jump into the hero side, because so much of what Valkyrie is doing is tied to that card. So we'll come back to the hero side, but let's look at Death Glow. So Death Glow is an upgrade that costs 1, it attaches to an enemy, and it says Forced Interrupt. When attached enemy is defeated, set this card aside out of play again, and if Valkyrie defeated that enemy, ready her. So this Death Glow upgrade will start out of play, not in your deck, and basically whenever you flip to your hero side, as we'll see in a second, you're going to be able to play this Death Glow card like it was from your hand onto different enemies in play. And the idea is you're playing them on minions so that you can defeat these minions, ready Valkyrie, and keep having this Death Glow attachment or upgrade jumping around to different minions. So I think I mentioned this in the preview video, but there's actually a class that is unlockable in Gloomhaven that has a similar effect as this. So I was pretty attracted to it when I first saw it because it's a pretty cool mechanic. But it is going to rely heavily on there being minions. Now I say heavily, but you can attach this to the villain. You will get a bunch of bonuses when it is attached to the villain. So it's not like when you play Valkyrie against a villain or in a situation where there aren't minions that she's going to be useless. You can absolutely attach to the villain, but you'll find that she gets more mileage out of this when it's attaching to minions, because there are added benefits beyond just readying that will start to get added on from other cards when you're defeating enemies. And obviously with villains, you're only defeating a villain twice, and once is ending the game. So just something to keep in mind. Let's jump onto the hero side, which is of course Valkyrie. This is a thwart of 1, attack of 2, defense of 1, and the ability is Death Perception. Hero action, play the set aside Death Glow upgrade as if it were in your hand. So this is what I was talking about. You have this hero action when you're in Valkyrie. You basically have an additional card in your hand, which is Death Glow, and you can play it whenever you'd want it. It only costs 1, so it's very easy to play, but you are going to have to consider that and consider a card in your hand essentially as payment for Death Glow anytime you want to play it, and it's going to jump around to different characters. So it is a really neat mechanic. You are, like I said, going to have to get the most out of it, you're going to want to have the minions in play that you're attaching it to, but as we'll see, there are benefits regardless of whether it's attached to a minion or a hero. So everything about the alter ego side and hero side is all attached to this Death Glow upgrade, so much of Valkyrie, what she's doing is revolving around that. let's jump into some of her hero cards, and you'll start to see how that comes together. So the signature ally is Annabelle Riggs. So this is a 2-cost ally, 1 thwart, 1 attack, a consequential damage on each, 2 hit points, and there's an alter ego action attached to it. So this doesn't actually do anything when it's in hero form, or when you're in hero form, aside from being a blocker. And it says, exhaust Annabelle Riggs, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Valkyrie card and add it to your hand, shuffle the rest back into your deck. This is really good, and one of the reasons it's so good is that this can be used multiple times. So if you are not using Annabelle Riggs as a chump blocker, or in a blocking situation, you're basically going to let her stay in play for several flips to alter ego side, you would be able to do this multiple times. You'd be able to keep exhausting her and searching the top 5 cards of your deck for Valkyrie cards and putting them into your hand. Now, how often are you going to have an ally in play that you're willing to let sit there and essentially not do a whole lot just so that you can keep her alive? To switch to alter ego, especially in a character that maybe you don't want to spend as much time in alter ego form. Hard to say. I think generally you're probably only going to get the one use out of it, except for specific situations where you've built your deck around the idea of keeping her in play longer, or you have a very controlled board state and you're able to get her into play and not have to have her block right away. When I've played with her, generally I'm only using it the one time, but even that one time felt really good. For a 2-cost ally that's going to be, functioning as a blocker, to get the added benefit of essentially drawing a card, but it's a very specific type of card from the top 5 cards of your deck. Yes, there are times you may not hit a Valkyrie card, but generally, it never happened to me. I was constantly hitting a Valkyrie card, and usually I had a choice between multiple ones, and it was always usually one that was going to help the situation I was in. She has some really good hero cards, so it is a good ally. It's not one of the broken allies that we've, I shouldn't even say broken, but just one of the super powerful allies we've seen that as a signature ally for different heroes. This isn't like Mantis level of power, or I'm blanking on other ones, but it is still a good card, and you're definitely going to use it, and it's going to feel good when you get that really good card out of the top 5 of your deck that maybe you can even use this turn, because Annabelle doesn't cost too much to play. So moving on, we have Valhalla. So this is a 2-cost support. It is an Asgard trait and location trait. Response: after Valkyrie attacks and defeats the enemy that has the death glow attached, exhaust Valhalla, draw 1 card, heal 1 damage from Valkyrie. So this is what I was talking about, where there starts to be really added benefits to putting Deathglow onto a minion, because you want to be defeating the enemies that Deathglow is attached to as frequently as possible. Being able to draw 1 card and heal 1 damage, potentially every turn, if there's always a minion in play you can attach to and defeat promptly, is really good. The added card draw, healing 1 damage lets you stay in hero form longer. It's only 1 damage, but as we'll see, there are other ways for you to heal and gain hit points while you're in Valkyrie's hero form, and it's more ways for you to potentially not have to go to alter ego and get more done as Valkyrie. So this is a really, really solid card. The games that I drew this early really dictated my play style, especially because I was playing solo for a lot of those games, so or two-handed solo. Having this out early meant that I wanted there to constantly be minions in play, so I could constantly be defeating them and getting this added benefit, and then doing more with Valkyrie each turn. It's a really good card. If you don't get it out early, if it's later in the game, you may find that you're deciding, is this worth playing? I'm already at a state in the game where I'm wanting to attach Deathglow to the enemy to help, whittle the enemy down, or get that, or sorry, the villain I should be saying, to really get that last stage of the villain down. At that point, how many times are you going to use Valhalla? Kind of depends when you draw it, but if you draw it early in the game and you're playing against a villain that has a lot of minions, there's no reason not to play it. It's a very, very solid card. Next up, we have Valkyrie's Spear. This is an upgrade that costs 1. It is restricted. As it's an Asgard trait again, weapon. Valkyrie gets +1 defense, but +2 defense instead when you're defending against the enemy that has the death glow attached. Really solid card. This is it's great when you attach to minions, but I found that when I was attaching it to minions, attaching Deathglow to minions, generally I was defeating the minions either that turn or the very next turn, which meant that I was rarely in a situation where I was defending against those minions. Now that being said, that's just my small sample size. There are some really heavy hitter minions that have been introduced in different, modular sets, and different villains have, that you're going to potentially want to, or not even want, you're going to need to have them in play longer than a couple turns, because it takes longer to take them out, or there's other things you're focusing on, and being able to attach Deathglow to that enemy and then have Valkyrie's Spear in play to defend with +2 is really good. But I found that the most useful time for me to use this card was when I got to the point point of the game where I was attaching Deathglow to the villain to really help me get extra damage on the villain and you know, get that last form down, that then Valkyrie Spear was allowing me to defend against these villains' attacks and potentially be able to survive longer in hero form to do more on my next turn. So really solid card. I would say that this is one that's actually okay when you don't get it out early, because a lot of its most useful value for me anyways was later in the game when I was defending against the villain specifically. But either way, very good card all around. Next up, we have Dragonfang. This is a really important upgrade. So it's 1 cost as well, and similar to Valkyrie Spear, it's restricted, but this one says Valkyrie gets +1 attack, +2 attack instead while attacking the enemy with Deathglow attached. This is sort of the reverse, not even the reverse, but this one is much better, I think, to get out early on, because getting +2 attack against minions that have Deathglow attached, on top of her base 2 attack already, means that you have a base 4 attack with Valkyrie. A lot of minions will fall just to that base attack by itself. And again, killing a minion means readying Valkyrie and being able to do that again. There's an opportunity here to get tons done in a single turn because of Dragonfang's added attack. So whereas Valkyrie Spear I found was more situational and was coming into play later in the game when I wanted to defend specifically against the villain, I found that Dragonfang, the games that I got this on in my opening hand, wildly shaped how well that game was going to go, because now I'm attacking with so much added damage. Deathglow's constantly coming off and being reattached to different minions, eventually to the villain. It's just really powerful. And even later in the game, much like Valkyrie Spear, if you're on that final stage of the villain and you know you are whittling it down and you're getting close, having this out in play and having the Deathglow attachment or upgrade on the on the villain means that you're now be able to swing for 4 damage on a basic attack every single turn on the villain base, unless you've even increased your attack more. It's just a really helpful thing to have out and get a lot of added damage over several turns. So really solid card. Cross your fingers you draw that in your opening hand if possible. Next up, another card you're going to want to try, potentially draw early is Aragorn. This is a 2-cost upgrade, and it's pretty simple. Valkyrie gains +4 hit points and gains the aerial trait. Now, the +4 hit points is really good. Anything that increases your hit points, especially with a hero that you want to potentially stay in hero form, which is most heroes, as much as possible, is really good. The only downside to this card is that, at least in the base cards that are included, I should specify, the aerial trait really doesn't do much. Thematically, it makes sense that it gives you the aerial trait, but there's really, I don't think, any cards in here that benefit from the aerial trait. So if that's something that you want to have mean something, you're going to have to go look into like some of the aerial cards that have been introduced, say in the Star-Lord pack or previously in the game, and include those in the deck. Otherwise, it's really a meaningless second part of the text here. But the 4 hit points, when I've gotten that out early, starting the game with 16 hit points, really big added benefit, especially because Valkyrie has several ways to heal herself. I was able to stay in hero form for a large part of the early stages of the game without having to flip, which meant that I got a lot done in those early stages and took down the first stage of the villain fairly quickly. So good card, just a kind of a weird second inclusion. Not weird thematically, just weird in terms of there being no aerial cards included here. Next up, we have Flight of the Valkyrior. I honestly don't know. That's obviously the plural of Valkyrie, and I definitely do not know how to pronounce that. And by now, if you stuck with these videos, I mean, give me a break. You know I'm like the worst at pronouncing things, not even just Marvel Champions, but just all our board game videos in general. So I think it's Flight of the Valkyrior? I don't know. Either way, this is the card we're talking about. 2-cost upgrade. Response after the enemy with Deathglow is defeated. Discard this card to remove 5 threat from a scheme. So pretty good card. It is, when you look at it that way, it's basically 2 costs to remove 5 threat. But one of the keys on why this is such a crucial card to have in this deck is not so much the ratio of how much threat it's removing for the cost. It's the fact that Valkyrie is not very good at removing threat in general. She starts with only 1 thwart on her card, and there aren't a lot of support cards in here to help with threat removal unless you're playing her in Justice or unless you're playing her in an aspect that has other cards that can remove threat. I found that, especially when I was playing True Solo, this was basically it. Like, this was the main way I was removing threat, and that's one of her weaknesses overall. We'll talk about at the end of the video, is threat removal, especially playing true solos. So this is a really important card. You're going to want to use these cards when they come out and potentially not just discard them, because even if you don't need them now, you will need them eventually. And so being able to discard and remove 5 threat is a big deal when you're doing other things that you don't have to say, I'm going to take time away from one of my base attacks to just do a single thwart potentially because I'm in such dire straits. You can just rely on defeating enemies and have 5 threat come off natively. So really important card, especially in Valkyrie's deck. So next up we have Visit Valhalla. This is a 0-cost event. Alter Ego action, return a Valkyrie card from your discard pile to your hand. You're basically resurrecting a card from your discard pile for free, obviously free in the cost, but you are playing this card itself. You're essentially trading this card for a card in your discard pile that is a Valkyrie card. And Valkyrie cards are pretty good, and they are obviously certain ones that you'll want in really key situations. So being able to have used those cards, draw into this, and know you can go right then and there and grab it back is really, really good. There was times that I used this to grab the card that I'm forgetting the name of, but it's coming up right away. That is her big 7 damage dealing card that has overkill, where I specifically used Visit Valhalla to grab it and be able to do that attack again on a follow-up turn, and it was really, really important to beating Claw, which is who I was playing in that scenario. So really, really good card, but again, it's going to be completely dependent on what you have in your discard pile. If you draw this in the first hand of the game, or early on in the game when you don't need to grab anything, it's going to be a dead card. You're likely using it just for the strength resource. Next up, we have Chooser of the Slain. This is some really cool artwork on it. 0-cost event again. This one is amazing. So search the encounter deck and discard pile for a minion and put it into play, engage with you, draw 2 cards. Phenomenal card. Everything Valkyrie is doing, much like Thor, she wants minions in play. She wants minions in play to attach the Deathglow upgrade to. She wants minions in play to take out for some of her other cards that have overkill and things like that. Like, she is completely equipped to deal with minions. So the idea that you're searching for a minion, absolutely there's a chance you're going to draw a really nasty minion into play that is going to make things a little bit more difficult for you. But generally, you're playing this card knowing you have ways to deal with that minion, because Valkyrie usually has ways to deal with the minion. So this, a lot of the time, ends up being a card with very little downside that is 0 cost, draw 2 cards. You're essentially trading this for another card in your deck, and getting an additional card, and getting a minion in play that you can potentially attach Deathglow to and get some bonuses out of. So it's a really good card, and one that I use like constantly. I don't think there was a single game that I drew that card and I didn't use it for its ability, and like wanted to use it for its resource instead or something, because I was completely fine with there being another minion in play, and I was getting an additional card draw on top of trading this for another card. So very good card. I think you're going to use it a whole lot. Next up, we have Shieldmaiden. Also some cool artwork on this one, a little bit more of a cartoony vibe. 1-cost event, hero interrupt, win the enemy with Deathglow attached attacks, declare Valkyrie the defender without exhausting her, and she gets +2 defense for this attack. Phenomenal card. The problem with defending for heroes like Valkyrie that are so offensive and want to be using their base attack, especially for a lot of things, is of course exhausting them is putting you at a much bigger disadvantage on your next turn in terms of what you can accomplish. Shieldmaiden, yes, you're losing this and another card from your hands. You're potentially taking a 5-card hand down to 3. Absolutely, that's something to consider. But you're defending without exhausting at +2 defense. You're potentially eliminating all the damage or most of the damage, mitigating it, and having Valkyrie still be active on your next turn. And yes, you have a lower hand size, but if you've built up Valkyrie where she has base 4 attack or base 5 attack, it's not as big of a deal, because you know you're now going to be able to swing for 5, potentially destroy the thing that has Deathglow, ready her again, and swing for 5 again. So that's 10 damage you've potentially been able to do that you wouldn't have been able to do if you hadn't used Shieldmaiden as part of the defense. So very good card. You get 2 copies of them, so you'll see it a fair bit, and it's going to get you out of a lot of really dire situations. And then, of course, we have one of my favorite cards from our hero cards. As you know, I love damage dealing cards. This is 3 copies of Have At Thee. 3-cost event, pretty steep. Hero action attack deals 7 damage to an enemy. If the enemy has Deathglow attached, this attack gains overkill as well. So Great, obviously, damage ratio for the cost. It is still a higher cost card, so especially with her having a 5 card hand, you're using essentially 4 cards out of that 5 card hand. I mean, unless you have, you know, resource cards and things like that. But, you know, at base level, that's what you're doing to be able to do this damage, which is obviously a lot. But 7 damage with overkill is super important because you're likely going to have Deathglow attached to a minion. You're likely going to kill that minion with a 7 damage. It's likely going to be overkill, so it's going to spill over to the villain. And because you have Deathglow attached, you're now going to ready Valkyrie again. And if Valkyrie, again, is at 4 attack or 5 attack because of having her upgrades in play and stuff, you can look at that. Like, let's even just say she had 4 attack base. She does 4 attack. She gets readied from this, does another 4 attack, that's 8. You did 7 damage from this, that's 15. It spills over onto the enemy, or onto the villain from this too. Like, you're doing a lot of damage in a turn, and you're going to see this card a lot. That's not an uncommon turn that I just described. It's a pretty common thing that's going to happen, and it's going to make for some really powerful turns for Valkyrie. So it's a really powerful card, and because there's 3 copies, it's also not a huge deal if you have to use it as a resource to pay for something else, or you're thinking, oh, now I'm never going to see this card come up. You know there's still 2 more copies. You're likely going to have them come up fairly soon. So very good card to round out her hero cards. Let's jump into the aggression cards. We have, actually, no, I'm gonna take a sip of my my hot chocolate here. We got snow here in Winnipeg, and we got a lot of it in November. And for some reason, as soon as the snow falls, all I want to do is just fill up my cup with like tea, hot chocolate, coffee, and sit by the window. I feel like that that picturesque scene of the snow falling, or just you seeing snow on the ground and drinking a hot beverage, just can't be beat. I don't know why I started talking about this, but I feel like I needed to explain why I needed a sip of my coffee there. I can see the snow out the window over here. Anyways, let's jump back into the cards. We have Thor as an ally, which is super exciting, and it's a really good ally. 3 cost, 3 health, 1 thwart, 3 attack, 2 consequential damage on the attack. He comes with toughness, and the interrupt is when Thor attacks a minion engaged with a player, spend an energy resource, resolve this attack against each minion engaged with that player in the order of your choice. Really, really solid card. So again, when I'm playing true solo, for instance, all the minions are engaged with me, and if there's a lot of minions, this is essentially could potentially be a board clear. I mean, not every minion's gonna have 3 or less health, but a lot of them do. There's a ton of smaller minions out there that 3 damage may be enough to kill them, or at least get them low enough that you can just pick them off with Valkyrie afterwards. The fact that Thor has toughness on him means that first time you do this, it would actually just remove the tough status card effect, not actually do the 2 consequential damage to him. Or he can take a hit and have it just be negated from the toughness and then still do 2 doses of this interrupt ability. Like, there's a lot you can do with this minion. This is really, really solid. Yes, it's situational. This isn't a good minion that you're necessarily going to include in every single aggression deck. But that being said, anytime you're playing against, you know, a villain that has a lot of minions, putting in Thor is just a bit of a failsafe to say, if the board gets out of control and I haven't found another way to clear the board, Thor can come in and really help me get that done. So you have to make sure you've built a deck with some energy resources in them, not too hard to do. I never found that to actually be an issue in the times that Thor was in play for me when playing with Valkyrie, but just a really, really solid ally all around. Really like Thor. And next up, we have Throg, which is the frog version of Thor, apparently. I only met this character for the first time in a quick little cameo in the Loki TV show. I haven't actually read the comics where this character's featured, so I didn't know it existed, but really good ally, actually. 2 cost ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack, consequential damage on each, 2 health, response after Throg enters play, give him a tough status card if you are engaged with a minion. Super simple, but you have to look at this at what you're getting for a cost of 2 if you hit all these, or this one condition. So basically, for 2 costs, you're getting a chump blocker ally that comes with toughness and does 2 attack on a consequential damage, which means you can soak up an attack, just the tough status card comes off, do 2 damage, and then soak up another attack or do another 2 damage. That's a lot of value for 2. We talk about you know, how important and valuable 2-cost allies are in Marvel Champions. I think that Throg is a phenomenal 2-cost ally when you can hit that tough status card. I think that's the key here. You're putting Throg into your deck when you're playing against a villain that has a lot of minions, and when you hit that condition, you're going to have a really strong ally in play that's going to really keep your board secure while you do other things. Super cool card. Hall of Heroes. 2-cost support response. After you defeat a minion, place a glory counter here. The alter ego action is exhaust Hall of Heroes and remove 3 glory counters from it. Draw 3 cards. Really good in Thor and Valkyrie, obviously. This is what I was talking about. We're going to get more of these support cards for Thor that are now also supporting Valkyrie. You're going to be defeating a whole lot of minions. It's going to take a bit to build this up, potentially. I mean, if maybe you build this up in a single turn if you use the Thor Ally and clear the board, or you're playing Ultron and all these minions are super, super low health. But generally, after you defeat a minion, you're placing a glory counter there. So defeating 3 minions means that next time you flip to alter ego, you're going to draw 3 additional cards, which that's a huge deal. Yes, the turn you play this, you're essentially playing 3 cards, 2 to pay for this, and the card itself to essentially that turn do nothing. So the key here is you have to be playing this on a turn where you're not sacrificing what you're doing that turn just to get this out, because essentially then you're delaying having a good turn now to later, which is still not bad. But what's better is if you drew this with a strength card, and you can just play that strength card, play Hall of Heroes, still do something else with your hand, not feel like you've put yourself at a disadvantage, but now you know that next turn, the turn after, you're going to get an additional 3-card draw, or whenever you want it, and you're in alter ego form, that is going to really amp up whatever that next turn is that you're in hero form. So very cool card, and I'm excited to try this in Thor specifically. A lot of these cards, try them in Thor and see how much they're going to boost Thor's ability to do what he does best. And of course, it's great in Valkyrie. Next up, we have Quick Strike. So Quick Strike is a 2-cost event, hero action attack, deal damage to an enemy equal to your attack. So this is situational in the sense that you are really only ever going to consider including this in your deck if you are playing a hero that you are building the deck around in such a way that you are building up their base attack value a whole bunch. There's tons of different heroes that could apply to, and of course that there's enough aggression type cards that you can build almost any hero, not any hero, but a lot of heroes that way. Valkyrie specifically can very easily get up to 4 or 5 base attack, which means that for 2 costs, you're getting 3 cards that now do 5 damage for 2, which is really, really good. And there are heroes the other heroes besides Valkyrie that can do that. There's ways you could do that with Quicksilver, where you're already doing a whole bunch of damage because of how much he's unexhausting and readying and everything, and then you're also adding quick strikes in. So there's a whole bunch of potential here. It is situational. It's not always going to work. If you're only having base 2 attack, base 3 attack, this is not really worth it to include 3 copies of this in your deck. You're just slowing yourself down. And there's going to be times you draw this where you haven't built up your attack yet. If beyond its base value, and then it's going to feel a bit like a dead card. But generally, I think if you've built the right deck for it, this is going to be a really successful card for you. Next up, we have Smash the Problem. This is a 1-cost event, hero action thwart, exhaust your hero, remove threat from a scheme equal to your hero's attack. So key here, of course, is that it uses the attack value. So for someone like Valkyrie, where I said that one part of her problem is that she isn't the greatest, isn't able to manage threat very well when you play her solo especially. Smash the Problem is now going to take her 4 attack or her 5 attack and basically turn that into threat removal for 1. You are having to exhaust her still, so it's almost like you've used her base ability, but it's been increased whatever the value is here. So you're not able to do this and then also attack. That would have been insane for a 1 cost, but it is still really good. And again, if you're playing Valkyrie solo, I think it's almost vital. If you're playing Valkyrie solo in, say, aggression, it's almost vital that you include cards like this or other ones that do similar things, because she's going to need all the help she can get in terms of removing threats. So keep that in mind when you're building Valkyrie decks. Next up is the Best Defense. It's continuing the trend of the last 2 cards, and it's the last aggression card we're going to look at. 0-cost event. Hero interrupt defense this time. When your hero defends against an attack, use its attack instead of its defense for this attack. So you're essentially converting your attack value into your defense value for free. All you're doing is spending this 1 card, which is a key to what makes this card really good, is that, if you only have a 5-card hand, you don't want to use all your cards on the villain's turn and then be able to do nothing on your own turn. Being able to, for 0 cost, essentially just spend this 1 card to be able to turn what would have normally been, say, a 2 defense value into a 5 because your attack is 5 is really good. It's very, very dependent on what your attack value is. and how much difference there is between your attack value and your defense value. If you already have her spear, I think it's their spear, in play, the one that gives you +1 defense, +2 if you're defending against the Deathglow enemy, potentially the best defense almost becomes useless, because if your defense is already 4, is it worth it to lose a card from your hand to get 5 instead of 4? Or maybe your attack value is already 4 and then it's the exact same. Yes, it has to be with the Deathglow enemy, but just something to keep in mind, if it's taking up 3 card slots in your deck, you have to really ask yourself how much value you're getting out of it. It's not always going to make sense, and you are still having to exhaust your hero, and she's not going to be able to attack on the next turn then, but it is a card that I think is really cool that it's included in aggression. It opens up a lot of possibilities to make sure that your aggression hero is protected on the villain's turn. They can do more on your own turn. Okay, let's move on to the basic cards. There's 2 really cool basic cards here that I'm really excited about. So the first one is the Bifrost. This is a 1-cost support. You can only play if your identity has the Asgard trait, so they're really speaking to Valkyrie and Thor here. Action, exhaust the Bifrost, search your deck for an Asgard ally, and play it, paying its cost, shuffle your deck. So you're not getting this ally for free, you are paying its cost, but you're basically using the Bifrost to summon them immediately out of your deck. So it is really good, and the other thing to keep in mind is that you're not discarding the Bifrost. That is the key here. So basically, when you get this out early, whenever you would like to grab an ally that's in your deck that has the Asgard trait, and put it into play and pay your cost as if it was in your hand, you can now do that. So very cool card. I can't even remember all the allies that have the Asgard trait, but obviously we looked at 2 of them here with Thor and Throg. There might be some other ones too. I think Angela also has the Asgard trait, if I'm not mistaken. But being able to play them whenever you want from your deck and do this multiple times is really good. I really like this card. I think it's going to be cool to go back to Thor and see some of this in action as well. Very cool inclusion. I like how they tied it specifically to these Asgard heroes to give them a little something. Little something. Why did I say it that way? Okay. Really cool card here I want to talk about. This is called Godlike Stamina. 0-cost event, play only if your identity has the Asgard trait. Action, heal 2 damage from your identity. You may discard a status card from your identity. This is really good. Healing 2 damage for 0 and discarding a stun or a confusion card for free for a single card. There's a reason why this is only for the Asgard allies, because if this was for every hero in the game, I would hazard a guess saying that you would almost include this in every single deck that you're building, and even not 3 copies of it. But anybody who wants to stay in hero form longer and not have to worry about some of these status cards slowing them down, why would you not include this? It's a free card that's going to just help you out in any situation. I absolutely love this card. I used it so much in Valkyrie. There was turns that I had 2 of them in my hand and I was healing for 4 damage and discarding one of my status cards off me. Even just healing the damage is really good, ignoring the removal of a status card. I love this card. It allowed me to stay in hero form longer than I should have and do more before I had to flip to alter ego form. Can't say enough good things about it. I'm excited to go back and try it in Thor and see how much it helps his situation as well. All right, the obligation is Trouble in the Otherworld. Give to the Brunhild player. Valkyrie cannot attack the enemy with Deathglow attached. Basically, everything she wants to do, she can't. Alter ego action, spend a energy resource and a mind resource to remove Trouble in Otherworld from the game. So this is another obligation that you don't have a choice to choose between. You're just having to get rid of it this single way, and you have to flip to alter ego to do that, which really is going to slow you down. So it's a pretty bad it's a bad obligation in a good way, is what I'm saying. You want obligations to be bad for you, because then they're effective negative cards. And this one is going to slow you down because you do want to get rid of it, because now you cannot attack the enemy that has Deathglow attached, which is everything you're trying to do. So it's going to be pretty successful in slowing you down. You're going to have to quickly go to alter ego form to get rid of it, which is obviously going to suck as well. Okay, let's talk about this for a second, because the Nemesis minion and her cards are coming up here, and the Nemesis is the Enchantress. And what I realized when I looked at these cards, I was like, man, these cards look familiar. And they do, because the entire Enchantress Nemesis set is pulled directly from Mad Titan Shadow. There is a modular set in Mad Titan Shadow called Enchantress, and it is these exact cards. The only one I'm wondering is, I don't know if the side scheme, the powerful enchantments, I can't remember if the side scheme is part of her set. That's something I'd have to go check now. I can't think off the top of my head, but all the other cards are 100% from there. The Enchantress is the exact same as the Enchantress from Mad Titan Shadow. Beguiled is the exact same as the Enchantress or Beguiled in that set, and the 2 copies of Seduced are the exact same. So it's not a horrible thing, but I'd hope this doesn't become a trend, because I love Nemesis minions and these unique cards. I'm one of the people who believes that we need more ways than just Shadows of the Past to pull them into play. As hard as that might make the game, I think that one of my favorite thematic things is that every hero has their own nemesis that's being pulled out and is unique to them. And when you play with someone new or a new hero, you're wondering, well, what makes that nemesis unique, and how are they going to be pulled out, and or what are they going to do when they get pulled out, and what are they going to bring into the deck. I love the thematics around that, and so it was a little bit disappointing to me to open up Valkyrie and say, oh, I wonder what her nemesis minion is, and realize I've already seen all these cards and I've already dealt with them with other heroes in the game. And that's what I guess is the worst part of it, is that, you know, other people who are playing other heroes with Mad Titan Shadow have dealt with this exact nemesis in this exact same way, which makes her nemesis and her situation not unique at all. It even makes it that if you were playing a scenario where you included the Enchantress modular set, I guess you just have 2 copies of the Enchantress in the deck if you had drew Shadows of the Past. Like that, it's just it's a bit disappointing to me. It's not that these cards aren't interesting. It's just I wish that they had found a unique nemesis. And again, I hope it doesn't become a trend. But either way, let's talk about these cards. I'm not going to go into them too much because I covered some of them already in Mad Titan Shadow, and these aren't new cards. Enchantress, 5 health, 2 scheme, 1 attack, search the encounter deck, discard pile, and set aside area for a copy of Seduced and attach to your enemy. So as soon as Enchantress comes in play, you're grabbing Seduced and putting it onto your identity. Seduced is a pretty nasty card, so obviously that's what Enchantress is doing here. And she doesn't have any other abilities. So when she's revealed, that ability triggers. Once she's in play, it's actually not that big of a deal, because especially if she's just attacking, she only attacks for 1, she only has 5 health, Valkyrie's going to be able to deal with her pretty quick. I think it would have been more interesting if this nemesis in some way was like immune to the Deathglow attachment and tied in a little bit more thematically with what she has going on. Unfortunately, that's not what we have here. We have a minion that once it's in play, Valkyrie's going to be able to deal with her pretty well, aside from the fact that now Seduced is on her. So the side scheme is powerful enchantments, hinder 1 per character to add on additional threat. Players cannot discard attachments that are attached to friendly characters. This is important because the Seduce attachment will absolutely be in play against you as soon as Enchantress comes in, and you will also not be able to remove it until you remove powerful enchantments. So that whole integration is very, very good. Like, that's what makes the Enchantress difficult, is that she comes into play, powerful enchantments comes into play, Seduce comes into play, and now you have this order you have to deal with them. You can't deal with Seduced until you deal with powerful enchantments. You can try to deal with Enchantress before you deal with the other 2, but generally you're going to want to do the order of deal with powerful enchantments, deal with Seduced, deal with Enchantress, and it makes it so that you're doing a whole lot that is not taking care of the villain. So that's what makes the Enchantress Nemesis and modular set so interesting, in my opinion. Let's look at Beguile before we get to Seduced. This is an attachment. Treat attached ally as an enthralled minion with a blank text box. Attached minion's scheme is equal to its printed thwart, and it does not take consequential damage. When revealed, attached to the ally with the highest cost without Beguiled attached. Attached ally engages its controller, otherwise the card gains surge. So I went over this in Mad Titan Shadow, I believe. It basically turns one of your allies into a minion against you. Love it. Super cool card. I think it's very thematic. I wish we had more things like that in the game, where it was taking your allies and turning them into minions against you. I think that's a really cool mechanic. And then, of course, Seduced, we have 2 copies of it. Attached to your identity, you cannot make basic attacks or play attack events. So basically, you become very useless as Valkyrie or as any hero that's relying on attacking. And the only way to get rid of it is to switch to alter ego form and spend 2 resources to discard it. So really bad card. In the best way possible. It's going to slow you down like crazy. It's going to make you go to alter ego form, and you can't even get rid of it until you get rid of the side scheme. So it's a real, like, don't get me wrong, this is a really cool, and I like the Nemesis set. It's just that it's not new. We've seen it all before. It was in Mad Titan Shadow. That's what's disappointing to me, and there's not really that as much integration with Deathglow as I would have liked. I think it would have been cool if this was a unique version of the Enchantress that was, you know, like I said, immune to Deathglow or something, and it had some unique things we hadn't seen before. Either way, it's still a fun set. Just keep in mind that, you know, it isn't a new set. All right, let's go into the cards that are included that you can build your deck with, but are not part of Valkyrie's deck. So we have 3 copies of Problem Solvers. This is the Justice card, 4 cost event, pretty pricey. Alliance, which is again the new keyword. If you're not familiar, Alliance means that you can you don't have to pay for these cards by yourself. Anybody that you're playing in the game with on your team could also help you pay for this card. Hero action: thwart, exhaust an Avenger character and a Guardian character. Remove X threat from each scheme, where X is equal to the combined thwart of those characters. There's a reason this costs 4. This is a ridiculous card for dealing with schemes. If you're combining their threat, removing that from every scheme in play. If you're playing a scenario where you had, like, say, 3 or 4 schemes in play, again, I guess that's the high end, but let's just use it as an example, and you exhaust an Avenger and a Guardian character that combines for, 4 threat, 5 threat, that's 5 or 4 threat from every scheme. Like, you could be removing as much as 16 to 20 threat with 4 cost. It's a really powerful card. You do want to be hitting on the higher end of it for it to be justifying that expensive cost. You do have to have an Avenger and a Guardian in play, so there are specific conditions here that you have to meet, but man, is the payoff really good. I think that in the right situation and against specific villains where schemes are a problem, this is the card that you're going to want to include, and you're just going to make things a lot easier for yourself. Next up, we have the Leadership card, which is Leadership Training. 1 cost support, max 2 per deck, so you only get 2 copies of this. Uses with 2 training counters. Alter Ego action, exhaust this card and remove 1 training counter from it. Choose a leadership event in your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. I believe we've seen this with one of the other aspects already, if not multiple. So basically, you're going to Alter Ego form, and twice while this is out, you're essentially being able to grab a leadership card from your discard pile and shuffle it back into your deck. I think I said this with the last version of this card for the other aspect. I think it would have been better for it to go into your hand. I think that it would have made, for sure made the card more powerful, but I think it would have been more interesting to be able to put it in your hand rather than shuffle it into your deck and hopefully eventually get it soon. Again, if your deck's low or like potentially ran the last few cards, a lot better, but I just think it would have been really neat to be able to get that card immediately. It would have opened up a lot of avenues. Maybe that would have been too powerful. Maybe that's just me being a little greedy, but I think it would have been pretty cool. Next up, we have Anticipation, 1 cost event, max 1 per player. Hero interrupt: when you engage a minion, discard this card and ready your hero. This is interesting because, for me specifically, because of how much I love protection, to now think about going and really, I don't even know if I've tried a Thor protection deck, but trying a Thor protection deck or a Valkyrie protection deck and using cards like this to get extra readies on your hero because the minion's engaging on you. Another cool consideration here is because I love playing Quicksilver in protection, and so much of what Quicksilver is doing is readying as much as possible. It's just another way to ready. If you're playing a villain that has a lot of minions, throwing these into your Quicksilver protection deck means now you have more chances to ready, and that's more that Quicksilver can do every turn. Lots of possibilities there. And with this free, there's a ton of possibilities. I'm really curious to try this card out and see how it plays. So that one is one that I'm definitely pretty excited about. And lastly, 3 copies of a basic card called Cosmic Alliance. 3 cost event. It also has the Alliance keyword, so the players can pay this card's cost as a group. Hero action: choose an Avenger character and a Guardian character and ready each of those characters. I don't even know what to say particularly about this card. It's good for sure. I'm just wondering, for the cost of 3, and the stipulation that you have to have an Avenger and a Guardian in play specifically for it to hit its max potential the only time you want to play it, is that good enough for the trade-off of just readying both those characters? It really depends on which heroes it's hitting, which characters it's hitting, I should say, and what they're being able to do more of on your turn for that cost. I just think the cost is a bit steep. It's for sure a good card, and I can almost guarantee you there are combos and things that you can, situations you could use it in where it's going to make things very, very powerful for you. But I don't look at it and think like, oh, this is a universally great card that you're always going to want to include, even when you have Avengers and Guardians in your deck. It's going to be dependent on, what it is that you're readying and how much more use you're getting out of it in addition to the original use of those characters. So that is Valkyrie's deck. So what do I think of Valkyrie? Well, what I think is, I'm going to take another sip of my hot chocolate here. That's good stuff. And what I'm going to say is that Valkyrie is a very, very, very good hero when minions are involved. She's, again, I'd have to play her with Thor more and see which one is doing the minion management and mitigation better, but she's very, very good in that regard. She has a bunch of really cool cards, and she's going to be able to really take care of them very quickly. in my experience, she's not very good as a true solo hero. And I guess I'm saying that more so based on her base cards here. Again, when I test heroes, I test them based on all the new cards that are included in the base deck. So that means I don't do a whole lot of deck building initially. I think you'll have to build Valkyrie's deck very specifically for true solo because she has such a distinct lack of ways to deal with threat. She has those cards that remove 5 threat in a single go, but it is just that one go and the card is gone. And sometimes it's not that you want to remove a lot of threat. Sometimes it's that you have a couple different schemes and you want to remove 3 from each of them, and she only has 1 base thwart with not a lot of other ways to deal with it. There's the aggression card that ends up being very important, which I'm forgetting the name of, is Smash the Problem. Because you can use her attack as a way to remove threat, that ends up becoming very crucial. But can you simply just rely on that card coming up? I think that's one of her downsides, and because I play a lot of true solo, that's where I was struggling with Valkyrie. However, as soon as I was playing two-handed solo, or you're playing with other people in multiplayer, she becomes a phenomenal support hero because she can basically take care of minions almost on her own, even when they're engaged with both players, and allow the other player to focus on other things, help protect her, and while she's doing that, she can stay in hero form for a while to keep taking care of problems like that. So I think she's a pretty solid hero. She doesn't quite fit my playstyle good enough to make my top tier of heroes, but I am really interested to try her out against very specific scenarios, even like things like Ultron, and in a duo with Thor to see how it'll work out. I am kind of a little bit disappointed we didn't see another team-up card with Thor and Valkyrie. I think there were some cool possibilities there to have a team-up card that really targets minions, or is maybe like a huge board wipe or something that would have been really cool for them to team up, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that gravitate towards, let me try playing these two together. That's too bad, but again, maybe you also don't want to be playing Thor and Valkyrie together, two heroes that do the same thing well. You want to kind of diversify a little bit, so I can understand. Either way, she is a pretty cool hero. Not my favorite of the year by any means, but definitely one that I think you should check out and take these cards and now try them in Thor and see how much it improves Thor. Maybe we'll get a pack like that for Hulk eventually, where we'll get a bunch of cards that basically function as a pseudo new Hulk pack that you can bring to Hulk and make him better. Who knows? Either way, that is Valkyrie. Again, this is probably, potentially, I think, the final Marvel Champions review video that is going to come up in 2021. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you didn't see at the very beginning of the video, or you haven't yet and you want to, go into the description, go into the comments, and fill out the survey for your votes and cast your votes on all the different categories for the Best of Marvel Champions 2021 awards, and those will be revealed in mid-December. Thanks so much for watching all these videos. I can't wait to share that next video with you. See you in the next one.